Education is one of our social institutions, meaning that it fulfills certain human and societal needs. As such, each society, each nation throughout the world does have its own education system. Um, when we talk about education, we're referring broadly to any experience that trains, disciplines, and shapes the mental and physical potentials of the maturing person. We can distinguish this between formal education, which is probably what most people think about when they hear the term education. Formal education refers to the deliberate, planned effort that takes place in a brick and mortar or virtual classroom to impart specific skills or information. So formal education is what you're going to have in an introduction to sociology class, or formal education is what you are going to receive when you are in high school, pursuing your diploma. Formal education is designed to culminate or end with um, the the attainment of a certain degree or a certain credential. Then we have informal education. Informal education refers to learning about values, norms, and expected behaviors in society, and this just so happens to take place within the context of a school. To summarize this point, I'll say that everybody learns something. Everybody throughout their life, regardless of where they grow up or what school they attend, or even if they never attend any school at all, even if they never receive what we call a formal education, everyone receives some type of education. Some people become very skilled in caring for younger siblings. Some people are forced to receive an education in kind of surviving on their own. Um, Yes, even within our formal education, we of course receive informal education about such things as, asking somebody out, or how to tell if somebody, might like you or be attracted to you, how to ask for favors, how to approach people when they're going through a difficult time. These are all the things that, we learn in the informal education. So, we have education, but then, everybody learns something, even if they're not attending a school or enrolled in an academic program. We call that the informal education. One of our three sociological theories, symbolic interactionist view, is going to think about how various interactions in school reinforce the meanings and reinforce various meanings and symbols, and therefore create stigmas and labels. Um, some stuffy language there, but what I'm talking about is, the symbolic interactionist view is going to focus on different meanings that interactions have within schools. Within schools, for instance, we have the emergence of subcultures. You have students who are very active in athletics, students who are very active in maybe band or a certain, math club or book club. Um, Students who are not involved in anything at all, students who might be involved in some not so healthy or maybe even illegal activities. How are we aware of these subcultures? Well, aware of it through, well, their interactions, for one. We're aware of it through their clothing, their speech, which certainly takes on, symbolic value. I mean, clothing and speech have meaning. We interpret people's actions and values based on, speech, clothing, their interactions. So symbolic interactionists are going to look at the different subcultures within a school. Symbolic interaction theorists are also going to look at the way that school serves as a vehicle through which students are exposed to and through which students gain what we call a collective consciousness. A collective consciousness, collective means group. So a collective consciousness is going to be a way of thinking within a group. When think about the different groups or the different collective identities people have. People might say, "I'm a Texan. I am a Hispanic. I am uh, I'm African American. I'm American. I am an athlete." Well, when people take on these identities, they take on a certain way of thinking. So school exposes people to what we call a collective consciousness. This happens both within the formal curriculum. The formal curriculum is going to be the curriculum that comes from, specific academic disciplines. So subjects such as math or science, geography, social studies, physics. That's the formal curriculum. And then what we call the hidden curriculum, this goes back to kind of like the informal education that we were talking about. There's the hidden curriculum, which is things that are learned but not deliberately intended. So this is going to involve, picking up norms and values pertaining to things such as, completing tasks on time or, punctuality, um, knowing how to properly treat others, depending on what circumstances they're in, being accountable for one's actions, being able to say like, my bad or, my mistake if you mess up, community service, being kind to people, being emotionally receptive to people. These are things that, you're not going to walk into a classroom and, you're not going to hear an instructor say, today we're going to learn how to be an accountable or be a kind or nice individual. No, it doesn't work that way. But over the course of your time in education program, over the course of your educational tenure, these are various skills that hopefully you will pick up, skills that hopefully you will cultivate. So we have the formal curriculum, specific academic disciplines, but then we also have the hidden curriculum consisting of skills, traits, values that most likely we're going to pick up throughout our time in school. Symbolic interactionists are going to study that because, of course, that comes about and that's learned through our interactions with other individuals. The functionalist view is going to look at the different functions that education serves in society. So, for one, perhaps most obviously, societies do not want a population of unenlightened, or you might say, dumb or stupid or unskilled individuals. The education exists to transmit skills to younger people so that as they grow older, they can be, responsible, productive members of society, and also, take on the jobs that older people who maybe don't want to do those jobs anymore or just too old to do those jobs. They take on those jobs that older people once had. Another function that school and education fulfills is that of social control. We talked about social control in our unit on deviance. Remember, social control is everything that gives someone a stake in conformity. Social control keeps people from being deviant. For example, you know, um, some students might prefer to spend their days playing video games, sleeping till noon or 1 o'clock, maybe smoking weed, maybe doing something even more dangerous than that. But why don't they do these things? Well, they have to be in school by 7:45 or 8:15 or whenever their first class is. So school acts as a form of social control. We don't do some of the things we might want to do that could maybe get us in trouble because we have to do school. Um, at night, we have to do homework that prevents us from maybe doing some things that we shouldn't be doing. So school serves as a form of social control. School also facilitates or permits reflection and change both personally and socially. We talked about that with the hidden curriculum. Throughout your time in school, you are going to become more self-aware, more aware of others and their circumstances, their feelings, and you are going to hopefully grow. So, that maturity is a function of the education system. School also promotes social and political integration. This is just like what we talked about with the collective consciousness. Because of our time in school, we all know certain things. School basically serves the function of putting people on the same page. You think of, many, certainly public schools, people come from different backgrounds, different religious views, maybe their parents have different political views, but school serves the function of getting different people together and teaching them, the same thing, at least, at least in America anyway, the same basic values, the same basic kind of educational baseline everyone receives, um, the same lessons, the same skills. It serves once again to put people on the same page. Another function of the education is to screen and select individuals. Think about when you apply for a job, when you apply to get into college. Well, a lot of those decisions are going to be based on what you've done in school previously. Not all, some of it depends on who you know or maybe your um, internships or volunteer experiences. Yeah, but your highest degree that you've obtained, your grade point average, the types of classes you took, these all play a role in screening people for jobs or screening people for admission into higher levels of school, and then ultimately selecting them. Yet another function of schools to solve social problems. This takes place most frequently in universities who receive grants to study and issue recommendations towards solving social problems. And then, of course, we have latent functions of the education system, which are going to, these are not intended, not reason why schools exist, but babysitting because students, especially younger students, are at school. Their parents do not need to pay for childcare. And then also, as you move into later levels of school, high school, college, graduate school, some people do meet their spouses in school. So school serves a latent function of being, a marriage market, so to speak. The conflict perspective is going to say, well, you know, we're always concerned about inequality, and school serves the purpose of, unfortunately, making inequality worse. Now that we think of people going to school, earning degrees, and that helping them achieve upward mobility, moving into a higher social class. Conflict theorists point out that that's not always the case. School can make class divisions even more pronounced. This happens via what we call the correspondence principle. This principle states that schools promote the values and behaviors of each social class, thus perpetuating or continuing class divisions from generation to generation. A French sociologist named Pierre Bourdieu um, speaks of the habitus, which is basically everything in one's culture that one's familiar with. A part of the habitus is comprised of cultural capital. Cultural capital just means cultural knowledge. Bourdieu finds that the cultural knowledge that is most valued and rewarded in schools is that which belongs to the upper middle class and also the upper class. Think about like the SAT, like the reading and writing section. The poems and the reading excerpts that are there are things that, let's be honest, most people in the lower classes or working classes are not familiar with. It's a style of writing that is really only familiar with the upper classes. That's an example of cultural capital of the upper classes being rewarded and valued more so than that of lower classes. Um, Also, schools confer statuses that create divisions and boundaries in society. One example of this is the concept of credentialism. A credential is something that helps you get something, right? So a college degree, for example. Over time in America, there's been an increase in the lowest level of education needed to enter a field. This is significant, and conflict theorists are concerned about this because these degrees and these credentials cost money. So they serve to keep people from lower class backgrounds out. You might be an outstanding writer, but you cannot take a job as a journalist, or you cannot take a job as an editor with a magazine because you do not have the credentials. You do not have the journalism degree. We call that gatekeeping. Usually, gatekeepers, people who are in a position to hire someone or give opportunities to people. Usually, gatekeepers are people who come from middle and upper class backgrounds. Yet another example of um, class divisions becoming worse as a result of education is what we call tracking. Tracking is something that takes place in many elementary, middle, and high schools. This is where students are sorted based on either their past academic performance or their anticipated academic performance. So you might have a class of high achievers or low achievers, and they're taught at different paces. Over time, those in the lower group take on the identity that they are in the lower group and that less is expected of them. Of course, this has the effect of altering expectations for students and leading to um, unequal teaching methods and unequal educational outcomes.